Great. Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming. Let's see. So thank you so much for that presentation. And Cole, would you like to go next?
Sure.
Okay, great.
I guess I don't need to stand there, per se. I have some slides that, in theory, will show up here. Okay, perfect. So I may get a bit emotional, and I'll apologize about that, but I think it matters a lot why you start a company. I think the value proposition really comes from understanding the customer and what the customer is experiencing and how you overcome a pain point. So I'm going to share a personal experience that my wife and I, who's also a co-founder. Could you stand up, Grace? So this is a personal experience that we had that really clarified our vision about our company, and it's the reason why we are motivated every day to come to work. So I had just gotten back from a red eye in London, and that's my daughter. That's our daughter at the time. Whenever I say I, it's because we're so close. It's kind of like one flesh here. So I just gotten back from London. It was a red eye, and I was trying to catch a couple hours of sleep. Our daughter was about 80 days old at the time. And I had to take her in for a routine kind of checkup. And at the time, my wife was planning the 100-day celebration because when a baby makes it 100 days and they're healthy, then all is well under Korean tradition. And so there we were. I take her in, and the doctor looks at her and says, "She looks jaundiced. That's not normal. Can you do me a favor? Just go over to the hospital right across the street and get a simple ultrasound." And so I'm pretty, frankly, I'm a bit jet lagged and I'm exhausted and I'm just got a million other things in my head. I don't even realize there's anything going on at the point in time. I go over and I start doing this, and the doctor starts doing the ultrasound. I was a nurse, and she starts crying. She's sitting there doing the ultrasound, and she starts tearing up. And I think to myself, oh, what's this about? Right? Because that's not something you ever want to have experience with your child. And here I am holding her, and they're this little KY jelly on her stomach, and they're doing the wands almost the size of her, the size of her torso, and she starts crying. And I know at that point something really bad's going on. And it's fast forward a couple hours, a couple more tests, and what we end up finding out is that we're in a room of surgeons, and these surgeons are telling us that our daughter has biliary atresia. What it basically means is that her liver can't secrete bile. And in essence, what they said was, paraphrase, we want to cut her in half right now and basically take a big chunk of her liver out. Hopefully that will buy her enough time so she can grow so that we can cut her in half again and give her a full liver transplant. And maybe she'll be okay after that. Now this is a healthy baby. I mean, she's everything to us, right? And we're sitting there trying to process this whole team of surgeons. And they want to put her, they don't even want us to take her home. That's it, decision made, here we go. And so I remember looking at Grace, and it was like this Vulcan mind meld that happened because I could tell exactly what she was thinking. There were 3 words that came into her mind and my mind at the exact same time. It was WTF, right? It was like, how do we deal with this? How do we even begin to process this issue? And if you think about the way consumers are treated in healthcare today, it's kind of startling. In essence, what they were telling us is, and well, actually, before I even jump into that, so there's fight or flight in life, and I chose to fight. I wanted to know a lot of information immediately. I wanted to know what the outcomes look like. I wanted to know how many times they'd done this and what their expertise was. I wanted to know how, if you had different surgeons in this particular situation, did it change outcomes? I wanted to know what it would cost, and I needed this information right now because they wanted to do the procedure right now. And that's a very normal thing to be asking in my mind. So you think they would tell us any of that? No. They took a step back, kind of folded their arms, and it was like, we're in charge, we know, and you just follow us. So I remember sitting there thinking to myself, wait a minute. I mean, let's just take a step back as a consumer. So basically, you want me to give you my daughter, and it's okay if it's the first time you've done it. I hope you learn a lot from it. And I guess, whether it happens long term, I don't even need to really know that. Just please go ahead. And what it costs, I'll just give you a blank check, no matter what it is, because I trust you. I mean, that's the essence of the way the industry was treating us at that exact moment. Now, thankfully, my wife was really connected in the medical industry. She was previously the managing director at Medtronic Corporation and in Southeast Asia, and she knew a lot of physicians. So we had a rock star physician that was a personal friend. And he's exactly the kind of guy you want on your team at this time. And I remember him coming into the room. He literally had bloody scrubs on. Like he had come from patching somebody up, he washed his hands, and he came in, literally blood on his scrubs. Picked us up, took us out, said the best guy in the world is in Japan. He's done this 2,000 times. He's done, in the year 2000, he had done this 2,000 times, this procedure 2,000 times. He quit counting at that point because he liked the symmetry of 2,000 and 2,000 times. But he still does it a couple of times a month ever since. If I could have the next slide, please. So this was the day that changed our world, and our mission became very clear about what we were trying to do to empower the consumer. In essence, we became patient zero for DocDoc. And it was at that moment that we understood the importance of doctor discovery and how important it is and how vulnerable a consumer can be. So when we flip to the next slide. So for the same price that we could have had a team that had done this procedure, the number was 8 times in the last decade. We had a guy, and this is the team here. We flew a team in from Japan, and the guy had done it over 2,000 times. The gentleman to the far right was his #1 pupil, and these were the 2 guys that did this, and he'd done it over 1,000 times. So practice makes perfect, outcomes do matter, and the fact that we got lucky and had that information made a big difference. Consumers need that information when they make these kind of decisions. There should be a place online that has this information, and there's not. So this slide is about gratitude and just how thankful we are. I'll get less choked up in a second as we start talking about the business. Next slide. So what we do, we help consumers find doctors. We're a doctor discovery engine. Our goal is to help you find the right doctor at the right time when you need them. And we do that both online and with a concierge solution. Next slide, please. So DocDoc is Asia's largest and most trusted. This screen's out, by the way, but that's okay. It's already Asia's largest and most trusted doctor discovery engine. We help people find doctors. They can read profiles that talk about where they've gone to, where the physician's gone to school, the type of charities the physician works with, the background that their specific specialties, price transparency. That's fundamentally what we focus on. From the physician side, there's a lot of workflow optimization. This is a less sexier part of the business, but doctors' offices and front ends tend to be a bit chaotic, and we help clean that up as well. But what we really provide is we provide transparency, we empower patients with choice, and we aspire to be the solution that Grace and I never had. And our goal is to bring that online. I mean, if you think about it, if you go to book a hotel room right now, the amount of information you can get about that hotel room, the price, what people thought about it, who stayed there before, all of that pictures, it's all available online. But when you go to pick a doctor, when you have a really personal situation that really requires a lot more information, and frankly, the stakes couldn't be higher, it currently isn't online. And I think what's really interesting about that, if I could have the next slide, what I find really interesting about that fact is that Southeast Asia right now is the capital of the world for medical tourism. And it's interesting. I think that I feel very fortunate because I feel like we've been selected to build this company because the leader of doctor discovery in the world, particularly for the medical tourist, should come from the area of the world that is the largest in that already. It already has that infrastructure in place. So I feel like we're in a position to build a global leading company because the infrastructure is already here. We're just putting on the online consumer interface that's so desperately needed. We currently operate in Korea, Hong Kong, Thailand, Philippines, Malaysia, Singapore, and Indonesia. Our primary patient volume comes from Indonesia because their healthcare system is just radically inadequate and they're a large population. But over time, we will expand into the Middle East and Russia and and China's another major market for us. Medical tourism is fundamentally in its infancy. The rate at which consumers in the middle class is rising around the world in developed nations versus the rate at which the healthcare systems in those nations is developing is an ever wider arbitrage opportunity, and medical tourism is benefiting from that. And a fundamental aspect of that's discovery, and that's the next slide. So I've specifically marked out kind of what this is measuring, but this just shows you how we've done as a company. In terms of booking data, we've grown 312% on a compound annual growth rate since funding the company. From on a cost per bookings basis, we're down 73% on a compound annual growth basis for 2.5 years. In terms of conversion, we're up 505%. And in terms of medical tourism inquiries, That's also doing well. So the business is working. We're a two-sided marketplace where we have to build liquidity in terms of doctors and doctor selection, and we have to build liquidity in terms of patients and brand equity. And we're building that lockstep quite nicely. The medical industry is difficult. It's a lot of work, but we are making traction. The next slide, please. So we're just scratching the surface. Globally, medical tourism is a $50 billion industry. Southeast Asia, and by that I mean in terms of the epicenters of medical excellence in Singapore, Malaysia, and Thailand. This is kind of ground central for it. We figure that, conservatively speaking, there's a little over $3 billion of revenue to us that's available in just these three markets. So this is one of these areas where 3 cities can really be a big company, and there aren't too many kind of industries like that in Southeast Asia. And that's primarily driven by Russia, Indonesia, and the Middle East traffic, and this isn't even taking into account China and the rapid growth there, which is already starting to happen from a small base, but it's really growing exponentially. Next. So this slide's from McKinsey, and everybody knows McKinsey's smart, so they must be right. And what it says is that Asia is the capital of the world for medical tourism. So the global champion should come from here. Next slide. Others also see the opportunity, so we do have some competition in Singapore, Korea, Malaysia, Hong Kong. Frankly, I think it's a good thing. If we were the only people doing this and nobody else saw the opportunity, we'd have to wonder if we were a bit crazy. Others do see the opportunity, but if you go to the slide after this, nobody's really doing it with the scale, scope, or sophistication that we are. This is a winner-take-all market. The first mover that raises significant funding and continues to keep the pedal to the metal is the one that's going to win because they have the most liquidity and they have the most doctor availability. So it's kind of a hand-in-hand as long as they deliver a world-class consumer value proposition. And I can't tell you how focused we are on that. It's really hard to do that, by the way. It's not something that comes easy. I think people underestimate execution every day of the week. It's hard to build a world-class consumer proposition. And so it's something that we're really focused on. We're not there yet, but we're getting a lot better. But this just shows you kind of where we are versus our competitors in terms of traffic. The red and the yellow line next to the blue line compares Singapore, Hong Kong, Malaysia, and Thailand, and we're not even on the same scale. So we're vastly larger. I think it's a function of the amount of money we've raised. I think it's a function of how hard the team works and how committed they are. And I think it's a function of the background of Grace and her ability to establish credibility in the medical industry quickly. Next, please. So we're now 64 full-time people, and we're scaling it quickly. The hardest part's about finding really good people and keeping them trained and keeping the quality high. But that's the ambition. That's what we're working on. Next. So it's interesting, you never know your friends until you ask them to write a check. And I'm very, very thankful, and Grace and I we're really thankful to people that have backed us up. They're shrewd entrepreneurs, they're accomplished business leaders, and they're people that have fundamentally believed in the vision and believed that we could build a world-class company. And without them, it wouldn't be possible. We have investors such as Koh Boon Hui, who is the chairman of DBS Bank and Singtel and Singapore Airlines, who's on the board of Temasek. Yochi Liu is the most successful medical device entrepreneur in Asia. We have Tam Bok Sin, who is a CEO of many major companies, Charter Semiconductors, Stats Chip Pack, and others. And then our latest investor and lead is Hong Leong, which is led by Kwek-Ling Chan. So we're very thankful for that. On the next slide, we also have some international investors, the former chairman and CEO of Medtronic Corporation, Bill Hawkins, and Dave McClure, who's famous in his own right for being a good investor and just a notorious guy around a lot of tech companies. And then Michael Bream is a very successful tech investor as well. We also have, I'd also like to call out Spark Labs, which is they didn't make the slide simply for my own inadequacy of getting it on there on time. They led the Series A, or they were part of the Series A round with us and have made a lot of this really possible. The next slide. So how you can help us. I wouldn't be an entrepreneur if I didn't use this stage to at least try to fulfill my own agenda here. So, use our platform, DocDoc.com, if you're looking for crossing borders and internet and kind of medical tourism. DocDoc.sg if you're trying to make a booking in Singapore. tell your friends about us. The more the merrier, the more people use it, the stronger it becomes, the more cool things we can do. There's all kinds of really good charity initiatives that naturally lend themselves to this platform, and we just need a little more traction before we can make that happen, but that will happen. It'll be very cool. And then the last thing is that if you know people that want to make a difference, if you know people that are going to be committed to working really hard, I was a bit disappointed and at the same time really happy by the fact I invited about 8 people from my team to join us, or our team to join us today. And the head of product and the head of technology wouldn't let them out, the 2 separate guys, because they were so busy getting things done. They're like, that's not important, focus. So, you know, that's actually a good thing to see in a team, even though I'm standing up here basically by myself. So if there's people that if you know people that are looking for opportunities, we're expanding and we need more good people. So, you know, tell them to send their resume to service@docdoc.com, and thank you all very much.